Welcome to Fuel Your Mind, a web series dealing with all things diesel. Today we'll be talking about base oils.
Hey there, and welcome back to Fuel Your Mind. Last episode we talked about the 3 different styles of injectors. Well, this episode we're going to talk about something a little bit different. Base oils. Do you remember a while ago when I talked about oil's role in your diesel engine? It's to lubricate, to cool, and to protect. But what is oil? And why does it work the way that it does? Well, oil is made up of 70 to 90% base with the rest additives. The additives, there's so many different things. We're gonna mess with those later. I don't have time to go into them today. Today, I just want to talk about base. The American Petroleum Institute has divided the bases into 5 different groups. The API, it's an association that has created the American standard and specifications for the industry. Now, like I said, we have 5 different groups for our bases. Group 1, well, Group 1's not really used anymore. We don't use it in the oil that we use in our vehicles on the road because it had a sulfur content was way too high. It was barely even above crude oil. Group 2 is much more refined. It is refined through a process called hydrotreating. It has a much lower sulfur content. It's actually very common. It's what is commonly known as conventional oil. Group 3 is actually even more refined. It goes through a process called hydrocracking, which leaves the oil more refined and more stable. Next up is Group 4, which is really quite interesting. It's the polyalpha olefins, or PAOs. What they are molecules that are broken down from crude oil at the molecular level. They're then synthesized into something that is even more stable and more uniform. Now, PAOs are very useful because they can be used at both extreme temperatures of hot and cold because of their molecular structure. Now, on to Group 5. Group 5 is, well, it's everything that doesn't fit into Groups 1 through 4. Most commonly, the molecule of esters is in Group 5. Now, these 5 groups can be further broken down into 2 different categories. Group 1 and 2, and kinda Group 3, are known as mineral. It's because they're naturally occurring. Group 4 and 5, and kinda Group 3, are synthetic, which means that they are made in a lab. The reason that Group 3 can go into either mineral or synthetic is because that it is refined to such a degree that it's almost turned into a completely different substance. All right, one last thing I want to show you. This is going to represent what it looks like on a molecular level for your different types of bases. This represents the mineral, which is naturally occurring, so that on a molecular level, their molecules will be different sizes. They won't be uniform. That makes it more difficult for them to get into all the different asperities in your engine and cover all the parts. However, synthetic, once they've been processed, their molecules are all uniform size. That makes it much easier for them to get into the engine parts, cover the asperities, and protect your engine. And now, this week's engine segment. Like we said last episode, today we're going to talk about the 7.3 liter V8 PowerStroke. Unlike the 6.0, this engine is loved. Beginning in 1994 and running until 2003, this truck has a history of reliable performance. The reason that it was discontinued was due to the new EPA regulations that came out in 2003. The 7.3 was not able to keep up with the regulations and still provide reliable performance and power, so Ford switched to the 6.0. Getting 210 to 270 horsepower and a 425 to 525 pound-foot depending on the year, this engine provides reliable power to those looking to haul. The fuel economy on this truck is average. The most common problems on this truck are inexpensive and easy to fix yourself. Some of these problems include the injector pressure regulator, or IPR valve. Another common problem is the ICP, injector control pressure. It's a sensor that works in combination with the IPR to tell the ECM what the injectors need. The 6.0 and 7.3 share injector systems, and as we already discussed, Hueys are complicated and can go wrong in multiple ways. One of the most common failures is blown tips due to stiction. Stiction is caused by oil breakdown and will end up clogging your injectors and the rest of your oil system. An easy way to solve this problem is to run a high quality oil in your engine. Higher quality oils can withstand the high pressures and heat of Hueys. If you look for an oil with a base PAO or Group 5 ester, which is naturally resistant to the extreme conditions, you will encounter less problems with the Huey systems. In conclusion, the 7.3 is a great engine with few problems and many benefits. A good idea to get the most out of this truck is to run a high quality oil in it, since this engine abuses its oil. Well, there are obviously big differences in the quality of oil, but one thing is for certain. Any oil is better for your vehicle than no oil. And next time, we're going to talk about the best way to choose the best oil for you and for your vehicle. But for right now, let's recap. There are 5 different groups of base oils as described by the American Petroleum Institute. And 70 to 90% of your oil is base. The rest, additives. Group 1 is the least refined with the highest sulfur content. Group 2 is more refined by a process called hydrotreating. It is also known as conventional oil and is one of the more commonly used bases. Group 3 is even more refined from a process called hydrocracking, and because it is so heavily refined, it is considered both a mineral and a synthetic. Group 4 are polyalpha olefins, or PAOs, and they are a synthetic material. And Group 5 are, well, they're the group of misfit oils. They don't really fit into anything else. All 5 of these groups can fit into one of 2 categories: mineral, groups 1 and 2, and kinda 3, or synthetic, groups 4 and 5, and still kinda 3. Well, that's it for this time on Fuel Your Mind. Please join us next time, and remember, if you have any ideas about topics you'd like us to cover, send us an email.